And welcome to another episode of Ardent Cinema, the #1 podcast for a book club style discussion of all things movies. This is a weekly podcast, and we encourage you to follow along as we take a deep dive into each movie's plot, overall themes, what we thought of the acting and directing, our feelings in the film, and more. At the end of each episode, we will announce the movie for next week, so make sure to listen until the end. Now, before we get started though, since Thanksgiving's coming up in a few days, I want to wish you guys Happy Thanksgiving, and to all the listeners, Happy Thanksgiving. Gobble,
Happy
gobble.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble indeed. Now, with that said, I am your thankful host, Sean.
I'm your even more thankful host, Daniel.
Welcome to the show. Soy Alejandro de España, no hablo español.
Not thankful.
Nope. This week, we hope you watch along with us for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, 1987.
During holiday travel, some people get delirious, some get delayed, and some get Del Griffith. Neil Page got all three. So instead of Thanksgiving with his family, he's spending 3 days with the turkey.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the Marconi family.
Paramount Pictures presents
Why are you holding my hand? Where's your other hand? Between two pillows. Those aren't pillows.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Written, directed, and produced by John Hughes. You may know him from his other gut-busting works, such as Uncle Buck, 16 Candles, and a little movie called The Breakfast Club. Starring Steve Martin as Neil Page and John Candy as Del Griffith. And that's it.
So basically, this movie is about the unluckiest man on earth just trying to get home for Thanksgiving. And as the title suggests, he uses every possible medium, including but not limited to planes, trains, and automobiles to get to his destination.
What else is there?
Bus.
Oh, damn, you caught me.
Yeah, he missed it.
I thought I was going to get you right there.
Aha.
Legs too.
And legs.
God damn you. Who wants to give their overall impressions?
I'll start.
Do it.
So I really enjoyed the film. And for context, this is probably, say, the 5th time I've seen this movie now. And I still really enjoyed, despite having seen it so many times. For a story about two completely different strangers who argued and bickered, but ultimately found comfort and strength in one another, it worked. The movie to me, is one long series of gags. But again, I think it works because I think someone naturally shows their trials and tribulations and how they eventually come together to really get Neil home. The acting for me was phenomenal in the two main characters. Everyone else was basically a vector to drive the plot forward, even Neil's family, but ultimately I think the film works despite that.
Very cool. For me, I found it very entertaining and expertly crafted, and I can completely understand why it would be a traditional watch every holiday for a lot of people. However, for those who don't go in for the cutesy stuff, I think it's a swing and a miss. The movie ends with a mountain of sugar, and whether or not it'll feel justified is going to depend on your view of Del Griffith and your tolerance of a heavy-handed score. What about you, Dano?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the film. It's definitely the ultimate Thanksgiving film to watch. I can't think of anything better during the holidays. I thought it was hilarious. There were so many great moments, so many quotable moments. I will say, yeah, the score was all over the place. I want to talk a little bit more about that later.
Me too.
Yeah, although Del Griffith was sometimes very, very frustrating, and more so than funny at times. I still overall found the charm in that character, and I love the chemistry that Del and Neil had during the film. So overall, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
In the very beginning of the film, I actually really liked that the movie starts with a series of sound effects of planes, trains, and automobiles in that very order. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Yeah, it was a cool opening sequence.
Which I thought was very nice.
Mm-hmm.
I like the animation as well.
Yeah, it was very well done.
I like that then transitioned into what was essentially a silent scene for about a minute or so. You see Neil in his office getting some copy reviewed by his boss, and the whole time Neil is basically looking at his ticket, looking at his watch, worried that he's not going to be able to make his flight back home for Thanksgiving. And the boss kind of leans over, is about to say something, and he goes back and deliberates once more. So I really appreciate that they go from this kind of boisterous noise with the introduction with the sound effects to just completely silent.
Yeah, that was definitely a great start. I thought John Hughes expertly let us know who the protagonist is within the first few sequences. They tell us right away Neil's a high-strung, wealthy exec, but he's not exactly who you would expect. He doesn't worship at the altar of capitalism. He desperately wants to get home to his family and understands that while his work is important, he's not curing cancer, and it's definitely not worth losing time with your family for a slightly better billboard. So right away we know he's no jerk that needs a redemption arc, which is really important. And it changes how we empathize with him during his struggles, especially in the beginning. It's a unique feature of a John Hughes comedy, and Uncle Buck actually had a very similar dynamic. In this movie, when John Candy comes in, he has to win us over as opposed to starting off as the lovable oaf, because we're with Neil right from the start.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. You definitely see from the beginning that he's definitely a family man. He's not the the workaholic that's always just buried in his work. He wants to go back to his family.
So I would actually somewhat disagree with you about feeling like you have to build up the relationship with Del from his inception. Because for me, John Candy is such a larger-than-life actor, and especially thinking about the time in which this movie was released, there were a lot of films that he had either starred in or co-starred in that, made him out to be, very much this lovable oaf, this, very kind, strong person, a very emotional person. So for me, looking at him, I go, oh, it's John Candy, and I immediately get into kind of like a comfort zone with him, so much so that I didn't really feel the need to have to get used to him, because I guess one, I've seen him in a lot of movies, and two, just thinking about the average moviegoer at that time, I feel like they would probably feel similarly because they've seen him in a lot of films at that time, and he's always, playing the same kind of character.
But so you would agree that if you don't have that expectation of John Candy, then that's the case.
If you're saying if it's someone different than John Candy, then
no, I'm
that
saying
characterization.
Someone today watching it who maybe hasn't seen all of John Candy's movies, then it's the case that I was saying that that he's going to have to build your trust.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe you're using a little bit of bias just knowing who John Candy is.
Oh yeah, no, that's my point.
Right, so if you haven't seen that movies, then it applies.
I would say so, yeah.
I mean, his intro, before he's even officially introduced, he's already kind of ruining Neil's life,
unintentionally.
Right, unintentionally, but we don't know him, and we don't know if we don't know John Candy, then even that unintentional stuff is annoying.
So yeah, I can understand, him tripping on the trunk. That's definitely not Del's fault at all. But the part with the taxi, I mean, that's just...
If he lives in the city, he knew he stole those guys' cab.
Yeah.
They were right next to it discussing the cab.
When Neil actually calls him out on it in the airport, Del quickly kind of realizes, oh, wait a minute, I did steal your cab. He's just like this blissfully unaware oaf, and that in itself is kind of annoying because
which is fine if you already like him, but if you don't, then that blissfully unaware is still annoying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking more to Del, a funny attribute is that he supports himself as being a shower curtain ring salesman, and he's successful at it. So I'm thinking, damn, he must be the world's best salesman. Imagine if they gave him cars or boats. Something that probably costs less than a penny a piece and people buy in wholesale, he manages to build relationships with. In every city in the world, by the way, apparently he knows somebody because of his business as the shower ring curtain salesman.
Yeah, that's partially how they get around, right? It's like, I know a guy here, I know a guy there. And
he owes me a favor.
Exactly.
Oh, how much of a savings can you give somebody on shower ring curtains?
I mean, yeah, Del's a nomad. He's someone who just goes where his whims take him, basically. So for him, I can definitely see that kind of guy knowing multiple people in every state, and he's sold to every hotel, motel, and other type of business, every tri-county state area. And
you actually see him at one point having to sell shower curtain rings, when they lose all their money. And he proves himself as a good salesman because is that being a good salesman? I mean, he's kind of lying about them.
That's a salesman.
Well, yeah.
They're exaggerating or lying.
Well, he's being a dishonest salesman. It's beyond exaggerating the qualities of the rings. He's just like, I think he said once, these were originally handcrafted for the Grand Wizard of China.
The Grand Master Wizard of China.
Did he say master?
Yeah.
The Grand Master Wizard of China. I was like, really?
I've got the deal of a lifetime for you. Do you have a minute? This is your Diane Sawyer autographed earring. This is Czechoslovakian ivory. This is your Walter Cronkite moon ring. They are filled with helium, so they're very light. This is an autographed Darryl Strawberry earring. These were originally handcrafted for the Grand Wizard of China back in the 4th century.
Like, just expert layering of lies just to make it believable.
That line was so stupid that it cracked me up. Like, it caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting such a silly line.
I do love that the film showcased his salesmanship ability. You know, I've definitely seen a lot of movies where they tell you someone is good at something or has a particular skill, but never actually shows you it. So I very much appreciated that they took some time out of the movie to showcase, like, hey, there's a reason why this guy could be nomadic, and there's a reason why this guy is ultimately so well known in many parts of the country.
Definitely. As far as his negative attributes, probably the nastiest scene in the movie for me was Del sharing a room with Neil, and Del starts gargling phlegm while he's sleeping next to Neil.
Why?
In addition to a few other nasty habits, like he leaves his dirty socks and underwears in the sink, takes all the towels. That scene overall, I think, would make some people gag if you're a bit of a neat freak.
Yeah, and actually the scene before he's doing his little gargles, he tells Neil, he's like, oh, I would give you my pillow, but I have a hypoallergenic one. If not, I'll be sneezing and huffing and puffing all night. And even with his pillow, he's still doing...
Yeah, as opposed to what?
As opposed to these, like, loud gargles. And then, actually, I don't know if you guys noticed, but during the scene where he's doing those gargles, at the very end, he actually does the gargles to a music tune.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the part that's annoying for me, is he comes across as... Or he's trying to come across that he's just this hapless buffoon. But there's a lot of things in this movie that actually seem extremely intentional.
Exactly.
That he's playing off as a buffoon.
Yeah, like the taxi scene in the beginning feels almost a little bit like intentional.
He knew what he was doing, yeah.
Yeah, and then the snoring, he was literally snoring to the tune of Shave and a Haircut at the very end.
The scene for me where he loses his sympathy was when he takes Neil's rental car using Neil's credit card, picks him up, acts like he's doing him a favor, and then when Del's trying to sleep in the car, Neil starts, what was he doing? Singing, playing loud music, smoking, putting the window open, tapping on the dashboard while looking at him so he knows what he's doing. Then proceeds to be negligent, destroy the car that's under Neil's name. And I'm just like, this isn't an ignorant buffoon. This is a demon. Like he doesn't know Neil's rich at this point. Like, you might ruin this guy's life. And this is on top of all the things Neil has paid for during this trip. Like, you're just using this guy and abusing him.
And I don't even think it was ever said how he got the card exactly. Like, did he just took it?
It wasn't his fault. That was a mistake from the hotel clerk.
Oh yeah, when he was scanning the cards,
they looked identical, so he just handed them to him.
He handed the wrong one.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, but Del knowingly used the card, and that in itself isn't the worst. You know, maybe he was going to return the money later if he could, and you know he was stranded. But then the negligence with the card that's under Neil's name is the part that was pretty dastardly to me.
You know, another thing I just remembered, after they got robbed in the hotel room and then they were outside, Del says, oh, at least he only took the cash. And then Neil's like, okay, well, what cards do you have? And he says, I only have like...
Diners Club? Was that it?
No. Like a big and tall store. He's like, oh, but it's some chain.
Oh, right. Why did he lie about that?
Because I guess he didn't want
to get out of paying.
To get out of paying.
Right.
He didn't want to use his own card,
I
which
missed
ended
that.
up being Neil's card.
There you go. I missed that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But had he checked his wallet at that point? I get the sense that he didn't know that the switch had happened at that point.
But he would have had his own card without looking. He said, at least we kept our cards. He wouldn't have known that if he didn't check his wallet. He checked that. He saw there was no money, but his cards were there.
Right.
And then when Neil asked, well, what cards do you have? He just pretty much said, no, I have this. I keep saying big and tall, but it was something like that, you know.
Yeah, it was a big and tall store.
A regional store, yeah.
Yeah, some regional store. He's like, yeah, but they're like to the north or something.
I would say Dell using Neil's card for the rental car was definitely egregious. And I do believe him when he said he would have paid him back with interest and all that.
Me too.
Some of the other things you guys mentioned I don't necessarily agree with because as the film takes a lot of time to tell you, this guy's been a nomad. And ever since the passing of his wife, he hasn't really been around other people other than like brief interactions with them when he's selling or staying at a hotel or something like that. So for me, I see this more as an oblivious person who doesn't really understand what he's doing. I mean, there's a point where he's basically talking to his wife, to himself, and saying, you know, I did it again. Like I never learned.
Well, Marie, once again, my dear, you were as right as rain. I am, without a doubt, the biggest pain in the butt that ever came down the pike. I meet someone whose company I really enjoy. What do? I go overboard. I smother the poor soul. I cause him more trouble than he has a right to. God, I got a big mouth.
Right. You know, he's both cognizant that he's not changing, but also not cognizant in the moment how he's like treating other people. Yeah. So for me, I wouldn't so much call that as dastardly or whatever. I would just say that that's just obliviousness.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's doing it on purpose.
Well, he does some things on purpose.
A few things. Yeah. The card and maybe the taxi. But the rest of it, no. I really think while he's driving the car, he didn't mean to, you know, get his cuffs stuck on the seat and almost, you know, spin out and, you know, all that stuff. No,
but he was being pretty negligent in that situation.
He wasn't being very, caring to the fact that he was using Neil's card. Like, the car was under, you know, Neil's name.
And like jumping around in the car and stuff.
But that also didn't feel necessarily with malicious intent. Yeah, it wasn't with malice either. I just think I agree. He's just a bit of an idiot.
Yeah, no, he definitely comes across as like a social idiot for sure. Like he has no real social manners beyond when he's selling. Like when he's selling, he's very personable. Yeah. But beyond that, like he doesn't have true, I mean, honestly, probably doesn't even have like true friends. Like he knows a guy everywhere, but I wouldn't call him like, you know, a person who has a lot of friends. So for him, this is something new.
Yeah, that's the type of personality I've definitely come across before. The type of person who, how did he describe him? A blubbermouth?
Blabbermouth.
A blabbermouth, yeah. They know a lot of people. They have a lot of acquaintances, but nobody wants to spend too much time with them. I definitely met those types.
Right.
But speaking to Neil's personality, he's not perfect either. He goes off the rail at some points. Mm-hmm. Never unwarranted, but he goes too far, especially when it comes to customer etiquette. So there's two big moments in there. He goes off on a car rental representative, which I understand. It wasn't unwarranted. He just had to walk, 5 miles through the snow with no gloves, and after everything he's already been through. And the lady is actually having a personal phone call in front of a long line of people who are all trying to get home. But it's not exactly how you get what you want, to start calling somebody an idiot and start cursing in front of them.
Throwing the F-bomb like
repeatedly.
16 times. I counted it.
Welcome to Marathon. May I help you?
By wiping that fucking dumbass smile off your fucking cheeks. And give me a fucking automobile. A fucking Datsun, fucking Toyota, fucking Mustang, fucking Buick. 4 fucking wheels and a seat. Your company left me in the middle of fucking nowhere with fucking keys to a fucking car that isn't fucking there. Fucking walk, fucking highway, fucking runway. Smile at my fucking face. I want fucking car fucking now.
You're fast.
So he broke down there.
Which, by the way, is the only thing that brought it to an R rating. It would have been PG or PG-13 if it wasn't for that one scene.
Yeah,
which, by the way, was not a ploy by Paramount.
I wouldn't think so, because it actually doesn't make sense in terms of marketing to have
as a matter
comedy
of fact,
as R.
As a matter of fact, Paramount was trying to get them just to change it back, to change it to PG-13, but the appeal was rejected.
No, the shock factor definitely worked there, because you don't see that level anywhere else. So when he throws it, it's awesome.
Yeah, it was a great scene.
But the scene where I can't side with him at all is when he goes off on a taxi driver, and the taxi driver throws him some innocuous joke, and Neil makes a small dick joke. Not a small dick joke, a small dick joke.
Why don't you try the airlines? A lot faster and you get a free meal.
If I wanted a joke, I'd follow you into the John and watch you take a leak. Are you gonna help me, or are you gonna stand there like a slab of meat with mitten?
That's right.
The guy knocks him on his butt, completely deserved at that moment.
The second part wasn't, though. He freaking grabs him by his...
That was taking a little bit too far.
Testicles.
He grabs him by his junk. He lifts him by his junk.
And drags him to the sidewalk. That was pretty horrid. But I don't even think the taxi driver was making a joke necessarily. He was just like...
Oh, yeah, an innocuous comment. Pretty much.
He was just trying to give him actually good advice, because he was like, because Neil was trying to ask him to drive him
to Chicago
pretty much from where they were at, another state away.
And the taxi driver was like, you can take a plane and have a free meal with it.
Yeah.
So Neil's not perfect either. I'm definitely going to give it that.
The only other time I would say I didn't really like Neil was when he was chewing out Dell in the hotel.
Oh, really? I thought Dell deserved that.
No, I didn't think so. I mean, I understand he was frustrated and he could take it out, but I mean, at a point, Dell had cry face.
You want to hurt me? Go right ahead if it makes you feel any better. I'm an easy target. I could be a cold-hearted cynic like you. But I don't like to hurt people's feelings.
And like Neil could see this, but he kept going anyways. And only after, they kind of break apart for a while, then he kind of comes to his senses and, without apologizing, mind you, he does get back in bed and, they continue their journey from there. So I would say that's the other one where I think Neil was justified in being angry with Dell, but to the extent at which he kept it up, I don't think was.
But I'm going to give it to Neil there that he never goes too far in what he says, and that his critiques are always what he's actually been experienced. Like, he doesn't go after his looks or his family life or his kids or anything like that. It's all on that you're a blabbermouth and you don't know when to shut up. So I can at least say that he's being fair, if not mean.
I mean, you could be fair, but then again, when you see a guy having cry face, I think that level of fairness kind of goes away, to be honest, because at that point you're just being, mean and like a little bit malignant.
Yeah, he definitely goes too far.
Yeah, he pushes it. But definitely Dell deserved at least a talking to.
Oh, agreed.
At that point,
agreed.
I don't disagree there. But then he went over he was comparing him to like a doll. What was the doll's name?
Well, he just been listening to him for the last 5 hours, showing no interest in any part of any conversation.
That's true.
So again, it's never unwarranted, but I do agree that he goes too far.
He was like, did it ever occur to you that I wasn't interested when instead of listening to you, I was reading a barf bag?
Something like that, yeah.
Oh man, that was great. And that scene actually does end with one of my examples of bad score. It starts playing an after-school TV special tune to Dell's Cry Face.
I agree. I felt
which ruined the emotional impact.
Yeah, it was too cheesy. It was way too cheesy.
Yeah, so that's like one of 3 examples. And I had actually looked this up because it was so odd. I think most of this movie is so expertly crafted, and then they just completely dropped the ball with that score. And that seems to be across the board in every review I've seen.
So yeah, okay, talking about the score. My main issue with it was that, they used every genre, it seems like, for this score. Like, in the beginning, they had a almost... what's that 80s cop movie with Eddie Murphy?
Beverly Hills Cop?
Yeah, it was like a Beverly Hills
My
Cop
favorite movie.
kind of theme song, and then they had classical music at one point, and then they had like country jamboree, and it melodramatic piano music. They just threw everything. at this movie, and it feels weird. I mean, I feel like the director's choice for this was to kind of match with how erratic the film was in general, like just the fact that they're going through this crazy adventure with wild turns, and maybe the music kind of helps emphasize that. But I personally feel like it was a bit of a miss.
I didn't even mind the disparate pieces. For me, it was mainly when they were trying to emphasize the sad scenes. The scenes should have stood on their own as opposed to this incredibly heavy-handed track, which plays during that scene, plays during the best friend montage near the end, and then again during the final sequence when Del meets his family. And for me, unfortunately, those scenes lost their impact when I was like looking around like, is this really happening with that music?
I agree. I agree with the end scene as well. I felt like it was overdrawn, and the music really didn't help it at all. Like what could have been such a really beautiful scene, like the part where they're like walking with the trunk, holding the trunk. I was like, oh man, okay,
that was a really nice one.
That feels really good,
and it worked without any music.
It worked great.
Oh, maybe they played something.
They played.
It had music, but it was fine.
They didn't play that sap track.
The music worked, but when they went into the house, I felt like, I don't know, they could have cut part of that out. To be honest with you, I don't think it worked.
I think it doesn't work as well. Not so much because of the music. I actually didn't have a problem with the music. I actually enjoyed a lot of the music, and I appreciated the times in which it was used. I had more of a problem with that ending just because, like, for example, Neil's wife is crying. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you crying? Like, he's been updating you this whole time. You know, again, we know nothing about her. Every time we see her, it's just a cut to her for a few seconds, worried or kind of lonely or whatever.
Maybe he's a serial cheater. She was terrified.
Who knows? But to me, that ending sequence didn't work quite as well, only because we just don't know anyone else other than Neil and Del. So for them to be crying or like incredibly happy, it's just like, well, he was just delayed by like 2 days.
I want to talk about that end sequence, and we're probably going to have a difference in opinion here, but I felt for that to work, Del needed to have saved Neil's life or something. After all the tragedy he's put him through, I don't see him taking him home to his family.
No, I disagree.
I strongly disagree.
No,
with that.
I think it worked, him realizing that Del's wife was possibly deceased. I think that really struck a chord with him, especially the fact that he was so close to reaching his own family and imagining Del just being alone. That really is what drove him to go back for him.
I get that, but his wife hadn't just died. He's been a widower for 8 years.
Well, he didn't know that either.
No, he knows that he's been on the road for 8 years at least. That's how he put it together.
Okay.
And I'm like, that is sad. I grant you, but being a widower doesn't give you full reign to ruin someone else's life because you're lonely.
Well, yeah, but unintentionally. Neil
and it was only for a couple days.
Neil never thought it was malicious either. He just thought he was an idiot too.
Right.
But personally, I feel like also tragedy brings people together. I mean, that's just the reality too. And drama, no matter what it is, and no matter what the cause is, they went through so much together. And even Del went through a lot himself. Even though it was mostly Neil, there were moments, Del suffered too.
Well, I'll take that back. I could see it happening. I guess it just wasn't as sweet, and it didn't hit home as well for me as if Del had done some final gesture that really helped Neil out. Because so far he's been kind of a drag. I wish he had done a little bit more. This movie actually reminded me of Tommy Boy a lot. I don't know if you guys caught that.
I haven't caught it, but I've seen the movie.
There's a little bit. I didn't think about that while watching, but yeah, I can see that.
I had wondered if Peter Segal, the director of Tommy Boy, he must have loved this film. There are a lot of identical setups, and I thought it was a pretty cool homage. The reason that movie actually works a little bit better for me is because the Neil character is actually a huge jerk and an asshole. And the Del character of Tommy Boy, is actually a completely innocent, sweet buffoon who doesn't want to harm anybody. or never intentionally harms anybody. So I felt like that dynamic worked better in Tommy Boy.
I see that. What I personally feel could have made it better was, there's a shift in the part of the movie where Del starts being less annoying and less problematic, right? It kind of starts around when they're like in the hotel room.
I was gonna say the hotel
together.
Yeah. The second hotel
room, and they're like drinking, and they start now. All of a sudden, what Del's saying is actually hitting home with Neil. Like Neil's like laughing at his jokes, and they're having a camaraderie together.
Oh, when that car blew up. Was that seat hot or what? I feel like a big whopper. Turn me over, I'm done on this side. I'm afraid to look at my ass, I'm gonna have those griddle marks on my ass.
I wish they would have kind of had more scenes like that and built upon that to build their like friendship. And I think it would have made the scene of him going back for Del even stronger.
Yeah, that second hotel room is where I feel Neil really accepts Del for who he is, or maybe even gets what he is.
Right.
He's treating him as an equal. So when Del's doing all these annoying things, it's like, just who is this horrible stranger? But now he kind of gets he's a lonely buffoon, and he starts giving him more benefit.
But he also starts pulling his weight a little bit, and I think that starts shifting the audience's view of him, and he starts becoming more likable.
Right.
Yeah, there's a shift in both of their perspectives where they actually start listening to one another. Previously they were just kind of there by circumstance, although you could say that Del really wanted to further the relationship or be closer to Neil. Then obviously Neil wanted to be closer with Del, but there was a time where they just weren't really listening to either to each other at all, and only when they have all this tragedy starts happening around them and they have no choice to basically confront all of this and confront their, how they feel with one another. I think that's when things start to get better for both of them. So, there's a lot of perseverance in the film. There's a lot of camaraderie in the film, but only when they actually just sit down and have a conversation, a real conversation. That's when I think things start to turn out better for them. And I really appreciated that the film took the time to do that. Now, to Danny's point and Alejandro's point, I would say I wish they showed a little bit more of that, because then immediately goes back into, okay, we got to get back, which I can understand from Neil's perspective is, I'm really building a relationship with this guy, but at the same time, my family is paramount to everything else. So I get him wanting to still, get back as soon as possible.
I think that's what the montage is trying to make up for, that they didn't have more of those scenes, which is a mistake for me. The montage doesn't work, but I could have used some more scenes.
Oh, really? I love the montage. I thought that worked great because it's Neil contemplating everything that had happened over the last 2 days, where he finally has some peace and quiet to himself. The journey of getting to his family is essentially over because he's on the train in Chicago heading over to see his family. So now is when he can actually introspect and reminisce, exactly. And that's when he finally realizes everything that's going on with Del.
Just like Del said, one day maybe we'll look back at this and laugh.
I think I think Neil said that.
Or was it Neil?
Yeah, I thought he was reincorporating what Del said first.
Maybe, but I remember Neil just saying that kind of out of the blue, and then Del kind of laughed at it and then moved on. That was in the hotel scene when they were getting drunk.
And actually, I have something to say about that final scene where him on the final train reminiscing. That was actually a last-minute edit change for the movie. Yeah, the original ending of the movie was just Del and Neil going to Neil's house.
Oh, really? I would have liked that a lot better.
That's what it was going to be. It was just like, hey.
Do you know whose choice that was to change it?
I think it was the director. Actually the scene, they didn't reshoot or anything. They used so the scenes where Neil is just sitting on the train and he's kind of just making these faces and kind of waiting around. He didn't know the camera was rolling. That's actually...
Oh, no way.
Yeah. They were actually just capturing just him prepping for...
That's awesome.
Just prepping for the role, and then they intercut all the reminiscing scenes. So he didn't even know that change was being made.
That makes me appreciate it a lot more, actually. I like that they made that last minute addition because to me, it made a lot more sense that even though Neil and Del, had this bonding going on, I could still see Neil saying, all right, that was great. I really appreciate it. Have a good life and move on from there. Because again, his family is paramount to everything else. So for them to say, okay, no, just come with me, I thought would have been, I don't know. Because at that time, Neil still hadn't realized what happened with Del. So for me, I really appreciated that they put in that time for him to be a little contemplative and then ultimately come back to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree as well.
I'd like to mention one of my favorite little jokes in the movie. Neil's on the train and it breaks down. This is the first time after he's gotten rid of Del. Up until that point, all of his problems were either due to pretty common occurrences like delays and bad weather and not getting a car, or Del sabotaging him. And this was just divine intervention levels of bad luck. I've never heard of a passenger train breaking down in the middle of nowhere. When does that happen? That was just over the top, and that actually killed me.
Hence him being the unluckiest man
yes.
on earth for this movie. Del, for being like this clumsy, bumbling individual, he was really good at predicting a lot of stuff, like the flights and what was going to happen. He's like,
oh yeah.
He says, $6 and my right nut says we're not landing in Chicago.
Oh yeah, that was
out
funny.
of nowhere. He wakes. He's like taking a nap.
He doesn't even look outside the window.
Yeah, he just wakes up. He's like, $6 am I right? No, we're not making it to Chicago. I'm like, what? And then boom, it doesn't land. And then he says, hey, I'm pretty sure this flight's gonna get canceled. And he goes ahead and calls a hotel early on when most people didn't do it. He called that. And other ones during the film as well.
But he was wrong about the flights not opening up.
Oh, that's
we
true.
find out like an hour later the flights opened up and they completely missed their window.
Oh, that is true.
No, but yeah, he does have a bunch of freaky
little predictions.
Freaky little predictions, yeah.
So after they have their fight in the first hotel room and Neil decides to stay and he gets back into bed, it cuts to the morning. And this is where I really appreciate the soundtrack because there's a song that say that the title of it was Baby Came Back to Me or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And they're cuddling. And he starts, Del starts kind of kissing on Neil's ear a little bit. And, Neil's holding Del's hand. They kind of wake up and they start processing what's going on. So he goes, why'd you kiss my ear? Well, why are you holding my hand? Where's your other hand? Oh, between two pillows. Those aren't pillows. And then they get up and they're like, oh, so did you see the Bears game last week? What do you think about their chances?
That's
machismo.
Old school humor, yeah.
Very machismo stuff to say, oh, no impropriety going on here.
The beginning of that, like when they first enter the hotel and they see that there's one bed. I actually really like how the score worked for that.
Yes.
It was like almost like this horror film score.
Yes.
And it was just cutting between the bed
and the reaction
and Neil's
shots.
face.
And the Del's face.
And then Neil turns and it cuts to Del's face and he's just like looking at him like,
You want to take a shower?
What? No.
No. You first, I bet.
Oh, right.
Right.
Which, speaking of facial reactions real quick, when Neil recognizes that Del was the one who stole his taxi in the beginning, when Neil first confronts him in the taxi cab, Del does like a sideways like facial reaction, like, oh, right. Mm-hmm. But then when Neil recognizes that it's that same person in the airport, they do another reaction shot, but it's farther out, and it's just Del like just very plain, just turning, going, oh. Like that. It's just a very different like reaction than what they had shown when Neil had actually confronted Del in the taxi cab, which that's my kind of humor, and I really appreciate that.
Go for it.
No, not really. I just wanted to emphasize that Steve Martin was really the MVP for me. He was in his prime here, and I always loved seeing him. I was a huge fan of him back in the day.
Oh, he was fantastic.
Very sad he retired early.
I mean, I think also John Candy was just incredible for the role.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
even if you maybe didn't like the character as
at
much,
the time,
he nailed it.
You couldn't cast anybody else.
Yeah.
That was John Candy.
No, he nailed it.
Yeah.
Speaking of John Candy, Del, or his character, he was reading actually a book in the airport. Did you guys notice that?
I did, and I have the name of it.
Yeah, I have it as well. I saw the book and I actually paused it and I was like, what is that?
I know what it is.
It was called The Canadian Mounted.
Oh, yeah.
And when I looked it up, turns out it was just a prop book, actually.
I'm not surprised.
It kind of looks like he's reading like a...
It's a saucy romance novel.
Yeah, like an erotic novel.
It's got a sexy lady on the cover.
But apparently, according to what I read about it, it was apparently supposed to be representative of John Candy's background as a Canadian, for one, and a Canadian playing an American, hence the Canadian Mounted. And actually, a little fun fact about this, you can see Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool 2 reading the very same book.
No kidding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a neat callback.
As an homage to this film, and also the fact that
he's also Canadian.
He's Canadian as well.
Yeah. After cursing out the car rental lady, she asked Neil for the rental agreement. He says he threw it away, so she smiles. After taking all this verbal abuse from him for, I swear, like 2 minutes, she leans in and she says, You're fucked.
Yeah.
Very matter-of-factly, and then she does a little wry smile. I love that.
Oh, yeah, and as I alluded to during my synopsis of the film, apparently a bus is not classified as an automobile. So this movie title is not accurate. It should be Planes, Trains, Automobiles, and Buses. And bus. I think there was only one bus in the entire movie.
What about a pickup truck?
No, they take...
I think that's an automobile.
What about a package truck? A milk truck?
Was there a milk? Were they in a milk truck?
They were in a milk truck.
Yeah.
I think that's an automobile.
Is that a carriage?
It has. I think it's any motor vehicle with 8 or less passengers.
1 out of 10. False title.
Mm-hmm.
So buses, right?
Buses.
Yeah. Nice.
So I don't know if you guys caught this, but I noticed in a scene near the end of the film where Del manages to find a truck driver to give them a lift to the final train stop, Del all of a sudden has a black eye. Did you guys notice that?
No.
I even rewinded it. I was like, when did this happen? When did he get punched in the face? I remember him getting punched in the gut.
Let me guess. He's trying to frame Neil. Take all his money.
No. So apparently it's because there was a deleted scene where Neil asked Del if he got the insurance for the rental car that had just burst into flames. And when Del says no, Neil punched him in the face.
Oh.
Hey, little tidbit, people, but there is a 4K of this movie coming out soon, and apparently they're going to have an extended cut never before seen.
We might have seen that.
That's got to be in there.
I want to see that.
Yeah.
It was almost going to be a 3-hour movie.
Oh, no.
And then they cut it down to 2 hours and change. And then they cut it down again to what it is now, which is 1:30.
Wow.
But the trailer actually has deleted scenes all over it that you don't see in the movie.
Right.
So it's pretty crazy.
And then misplaced the extra footage, which happens all the time with movies of that era.
The footage is actually in the Paramount vault.
Yeah.
Rotting away.
Wow.
Well, not anymore.
Oh, well, the extra, like maybe the 2-hour one, but the 3-hour cut, I'm pretty sure the director said, the director himself said that, yeah.
He doesn't want people to see it?
No, it's not that. He had made a comment saying that it's probably deteriorated in the vault or something.
That's depressing.
Did you know that John Hughes was inspired to write this movie based on a trip of his own? He was on a flight from New York to Chicago, and the flight was diverted to Wichita.
Was he Del or Neil?
He was probably Neil.
Okay.
And it took him 5 days to get home.
Whoa.
So pretty similar. I don't know if he had Adele with him, but Adele, not Adele the singer.
Right.
Did you know that after Del steals Neil's cab at the beginning of the movie, Neil looks down and sees that the cab is gone, and in the puddle on the ground are 2 shower curtain rings.
I did see that.
Oh, you saw that
Yes.
one? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, good. Nice catch. Did you know the
Hold on.
What?
He's like a piñata just dropping
Yeah.
his defining items all over. That's awesome.
It's a thief giving his calling card away.
Oh,
Like the wet bandits.
That's not the first time you see the shower curtain rings like kind of in the background. Like also I noticed in the diner when they were talking, like when Del was able to pay for the food, if you look in the background, you could see a group of people sitting at another table wearing them as earrings.
I did notice that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And then my final did you know is did you know that the exterior of the rental car was designed to resemble that of the Griswolds station wagon?
I believe it.
From John Hughes's previous production, National Lampoon's Vacation.
Yeah.
So
I thought it looked familiar.
So another thing that I noticed in this movie was the fact that there were actually a lot of kind of cameos from some big names.
Definitely.
You know, people like Kevin Bacon and the character that played the police officer near the end of the film.
Michael McKean.
And I kind of wondered why their roles were so small. And actually, it plays into the fact that the movie was supposed to be... Actually, originally I said 3 hours. It was supposed to be 3 hours and 40 minutes or worth of content that they then had to cut down. So they deleted a lot of scenes. And actually, Michael McKean's character was going to play a bigger role than that in the scene.
There's also Harry Lankin, who's the taxi driver. And you may recognize him as the junkyard owner from Breaking Bad. And I thought he was really great in this small role.
And the motel owner is the lawyer from Jurassic Park.
You mean the lawyer from Better Call Saul?
No.
Because he was in there too. Who was he? I remember seeing him.
I don't know who he was, but...
he was also in there.
I haven't seen Better Call Saul, so I don't know. But,
okay.
I guess, the last thing I recognized him in was Jurassic Park.
Nice. I missed that one.
So yeah, there's a lot of these roles I think that probably had more screen time that were obviously cut out.
I can't wait to see the new footage.
Yeah, I would love to see the extended version. Though I can see why they wanted to cut down so much. I mean, already the amount of gags in this film sometimes can overwhelm you a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a holiday film, so you want something that's going to be accessible.
Yeah,
definitely. Right. I think, unless you guys have anything else, that we're about ready for scores.
I'm ready.
Let's do it. I'll go first.
Sean will go first.
I give it an 8 out of 10.
Hey-o.
Very solid film. There's a reason I come back to this every couple of years, every few years. Very heartwarming. Very appreciative of the themes that are laid throughout this film, especially the thought of supporting one another despite not really knowing each other, perseverance. And yeah, just overall, I really love the two main characters for what the film was trying to accomplish. I think they did a very, very good job. And yeah, this is a film that I look forward to seeing again soon.
So yeah, I'm pretty close. I ranked mine a little higher. I gave it an 8.5.
Really? I felt like I was more bullish on it than you guys were.
I mean, despite its problems, you were less vocal about its issues than we were, but to me, that didn't mean the score was, overall as a comedy, it did its job. I was laughing out loud. There were so many memorable quotes and moments that you can refer to, at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed all of that. The acting was phenomenal. It was very wholesome. I guess what does bring it down from, a 10 is, one, the soundtrack overall could have been done better.
Sure.
There were some moments that the soundtrack worked, some moments where it didn't. The wholesome moments were brought down, I believe, by the soundtrack. It made it feel too cheesy, too drawn out.
Sure.
And at some moments I felt like the gags were done in too quick of a succession, and there were moments in the film where I felt like a little bit overloaded by them, like I needed a little more space, like just one after the next, like Neo getting destroyed by everything. It's, I especially noticed it, I think, in that first hotel room, just like
everything that went on.
Everything going on, and then the shower, and then like the water going away, coming back, and
Right.
And the towel, the tiny towel. It's just like over and over and over, you know. But other than that, I thought it was a fantastic film, and I think it's the Thanksgiving film to watch.
Absolutely.
Nice. I am going to go 7 out of 10. I thought it was expertly crafted in most areas, and like you both mentioned, filled to the brim with great jokes. Unfortunately for me, the ending and musical score drags it down, kicking and screaming into a shallow grave.
Yeah.
Wow.
Damn.
I recommend it for families. It's a great holiday movie.
That seems like a little bit of a slight.
Damn, what an ending.
Highly recommend.
Shallow grave. Highly recommend.
Well, on that note, what have you guys been watching, playing, or listening to this week?
I saw Almost Famous from the distant past year of 2000. Ooh, directed by Cameron Crowe. It's a film about fame, what it does to the famous with their pursuit of it, and what it does to the people who idolize the famous. It follows a 15-year-old kid who's gotten the opportunity to write an article for Rolling Stone magazine about his favorite rock band. He goes on a tour with them and maybe learns some lessons, maybe teaches some lessons, something like that. Highly recommend it.
All right. I haven't seen any new films this week. I think from last week to this week, I've watched like one extra episode of Castlevania.
Okay, nice.
Still good. Still recommend it. What
Nice.
about you, Sean?
So Alejandro and I actually watched a movie together the other day. We watched Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. Yes, that's the actual title of the film. Starring Nick Cage and Eva Mendes.
It's the much better remake of the Harvey Keitel movie.
I mean, to be fair, it doesn't have him dancing naked in a drug-addled stupor. So
He doesn't flash dong in this one. We can say that.
no, and thankfully that doesn't happen.
Yep.
I would not have appreciated that. It's a wild ride. If anyone wants to laugh at a movie that's trying to be both self-serious and not, highly recommend.
Sweet.
For next week, we'll be watching Scent of a Woman. Again, Scent of a Woman.
There you go.
1992. And the reason I did that voice is because it stars Al Pacino, Chris O'Donnell, and Gabrielle Anwar. You can watch it on Amazon Prime Video, so watch it before next week's episode.
Very cool. Sean, let them know where they can find us.
You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Ardent Cinema. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, and hit the little notify bell so that you're made aware when new episodes drop every week. Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate it. We bid you adieu.
Farewell.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble.
I'm not doing that.